Coming up on this episode of the Model 3 Owners Club show,
we do a year in review for the Model 3.
Yep. We also have some current Model 3 news and some Tesla news.
Yeah, some more news from EVs around the world.
Yeah, another competitor jumps in the EV marketplace.
Good. And we have lots of mailbags, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Well, thanks for joining this episode of the show. My name is Kenneth Bocor.
I'm Trevor Page. Thanks for joining us again. Hey, it's holiday season time.
It's holiday season.
This is the last show we're going to do for this year. We're going to take a little break for the holidays. We'll come back in January because things really will start get going for the Model 3. So everybody who's watching, thanks for watching. We've had a really good year so far.
We've had a great year. Thanks very much for watching and, of course, for all your feedback. And thanks for the feedback on my solar episode that I did a couple of weeks ago. I learned a lot from that, so I appreciate that. And I will take your changes to heart for the next ones when we do some more next year. Well, listen, we've got a year in review to recap on the Model 3. Let's get going with that. So, I mean, obviously, this whole thing, we got excited on March 31st when it all started with that first reveal.
Yeah, it was a big party. Tesla had a big party down in Hawthorne at the design studio. And wow, we were pretty impressed. I mean, 115,000 reservations in the first 24 hours.
Exactly.
That's nuts.
You stood in line prior.
Well, at the local store, yes.
So Trevor stood in line at the local store. I didn't watch I was up late packing. I was traveling the next day on April 1st. So I did not watch the reveal live. I watched it at about 5 in the morning Eastern time when I was at the airport waiting to catch a 7 o'clock flight or 6:30 flight, and I put my reservation in right after I watched it. So that's kind of my timeline. You stood in the store, and you were in on the 31st. At what time roughly?
My reservation went in at approximately
it was
about 9:30 in the morning.
The morning, okay,
yeah, pretty early when the doors first opened and stuff.
So what an exciting time that was, and obviously we weren't the only ones putting reservations in. A lot of our viewers were like you, and it came out to in the first 24 hours 115,000 reservations.
That's right. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Who would ever
thought? Exceeded everybody's expectations, including Tesla. So
absolutely. And we talked about this on an earlier show, but by comparison, in the 2 days following that, there was almost 250,000 reservations that were put into that. And that beats records held by the 1955 Citroën DS that had 80,000 in 10 days. Again, that's a while ago. And we talked about the Ford Mustang, the 64 Ford Mustang that had 22,000 reservations on their first day. So this is phenomenal numbers.
This is the big, from a monetary aspect, this is the biggest product launch ever in history.
Absolutely.
It's about $14 billion on the books in terms of vehicle.
Billion.
It's incredible.
And the interesting fact about those reservationists were that 93% of them came from people that do not have Teslas today.
I observed that when I was standing in line. I thought
it would be totally opposite. Right?
Yeah, when I was standing in line, I was talking to a lot of people, and it was the large majority of the people in line had, never owned a Tesla before, aspired to own a Tesla, and this was the first affordable, vehicle for them. So definitely.
And I think we're seeing that from the emails and the comments that we see on the forum, on the Facebook site. A lot of people, this is their first time getting into the Tesla realm, myself included. You haven't owned a Tesla yet either, even though we keep debating an S, but we're going to wait. So that's interesting. And then, of course, after that, in April or in the late part of March, early April, then Tesla set those production targets to 500,000 by 2018.
Yeah, they moved it up by about 2 years.
Yep. Absolutely. Then April, of course, that Motor Trend video and picture spread that came out. Wasn't that sweet?
Oh, that was really nice. Yeah. They the story goes behind them is that they were pestering Tesla for a long time to get access for pictures, and Tesla finally relented, so they invited them out to the Gigafactory, and that's when they did the shoot out in the desert and stuff. So we got some very good. They certainly got some great footage and some great pictures of the car and the family, because at that time,
they had comparisons.
They had a Model X and a blue Model S with a new facelift too, so they got a good shot of those pictures. So
absolutely.
Every time I see that silver car, it just looks so much better.
It does look nice, silver. Boy, it's going to be a tough decision there. And then, of course, we talked about the initial battery size. There was a little bit of debate on, is it going to be less than 60 kilowatt hours? Is it going to be 65, 55? So we still don't know exactly what they're going to come out with.
It should be in that vicinity, anywhere from 50, 55, 60, somewhere in there.
Yep.
I mean, it's not, a lot of people are making comments about, well, the vehicle's lighter. It's a little bit lighter, but not that much.
Right.
Efficiencies in inverter technology, bigger battery cells, higher density battery cells, electronic improvement. I mean, everything about the Model 3 is new. So they could potentially get away, and the aerodynamics too.
Yep.
They could potentially get away with a slightly battery pack. But at the end of the day, the battery pack size doesn't really matter as long as you get the rated range.
Correct. And there's a lot of factors for that range. So absolutely. And of course, Tesla announced about building their growth team for the Model 3 and beyond, again, to help fuel the demand and the requirements for the Model 3. Then in May, of course, we launched our first show.
Yeah.
That was an exciting time for us. Now, did we look a little nervous, a little awkward in that first show?
Yeah. Well, the first 3 episodes, we were still getting our feet wet.
Yeah. We had Bumpgate. We had a few other exciting things happen in May, but it was all good. And we appreciate all our viewers for sticking with us and for helping us grow the show as well and for the content. And reservations continue to grow for Tesla for the Model 3, reaching over 370,000 in May.
Yep. And it's still been growing, but Tesla's been keeping very mum about it because the first year's production is completely sold out. So the last thing you want to do is announce even more reservations when the car can't even be delivered by then. So
exactly.
Yeah, we're pretty sure that it's much, much higher than what they've been publicly stating.
Yeah. Then in June, new Autopilot hardware was being tested. We saw some pictures and some news that came out about that. Some of these mules that were running around with this stuff on there.
Well, the hardware was released a little later in the year, but of course in the summertime they were starting to test, the new hardware, so that we got first glimpses of what that was going to be like.
Yep. Then in July, the Model 3 design was locked in, and of course there were some more pics that were released. That black prototype that was in the shop, we all looked at the trunk, and there was a lot of discussions about reshaping the trunk and things that might be done for designing that. Interior, there were some interior snaps, and again, that's been something that Tesla has not wanted to be photographed by anybody. I know in the Motor Trend they weren't allowed to photograph the interior and video it, but we saw some more. We saw some panoramic roof shots, and of course more sightings in the wild. So it was interesting as things started to leak out. And that silver prototype we just talked about. There was a great picture of it in front of a fountain with a flag from the U.S. I don't remember that shot. Just the way it gleamed in the sunlight or something. It was really, really sweet.
Yeah, it's the same silver prototype. I mean, every picture we've seen so far has always been the same silver prototype. Yep. Silver is a good color because it photographs really well for these things because it really shows the lines.
Exactly.
And we haven't seen the black one all that much lately. So
exactly. And then we had the Gigafactory grand opening. So that was an interesting event there as well. Just, again, everything moving along the time scale. August, September, there was more capital that was raised for the Model 3 production and readiness in Fremont, which Tesla was speculating about 9 to 10 months away. The Master Plan Part 2 was announced, which integrated the energy generation and storage aspects of the Tesla business, along with future intro of new models, the autonomy gains. Of course, that's another topic, and vehicle sharing. I'm not sure about the vehicle sharing. That's something I may not get into, but I can see the viability.
Keep an open mind, Ken.
Yep, keep an open mind. We might share for a little bit. Who knows? And then Autopilot 2 and .0, more announcements, and the Solar City deal, which finally closed just recently. So that was all part of August, September. Then October, Model 3 news. We had production updates coming from the Fremont line layouts, some sourcing information, doubling about the Fremont size, that was moving forward, some info about component costs, and being about half of what the Model S is, which is in line again for that price point.
Again, a lot of this stuff came out in the financial calls with Tesla because they don't like to talk about anything until the financial calls. That's the best place to glean information. Of course, we're coming up on the last, the fourth quarter now. So expect to find out more information come January. The Fremont factory is going to double in size over the next few years, not for Model 3, but they plan on doing the trucks and the semis and the buses and all the other stuff. So they have to really get that factory up to par for that until they can build a second Gigafactory in Europe with the combined car battery factory. So we expect to see more of that information about that sometime next year.
And that black prototype, there were some more pics that came out for that. People love that black. We talked about that in the last show. And then in November, early Model 3 reservation holders will have something special.
Elon's tweet.
So, and we talked a little bit about what that could be. More Model 3 sightings that were in the wild for that Q3 earnings party, and the the Solar City roof event that was launched. So we got to see it again in comparison with other models, and people were taking a lot of pictures of that before they were shooed away. Yeah. And then finally, we saw some early pics about the Model 3 glass roof, what that could look like.
Well, don't forget, shortly after that, they added the glass roof option to the Model S.
Absolutely.
And we started to see some of those in the wild. Now it's beautiful.
Absolutely. So let's get into current news then on the Model 3, and let's keep on that glass roof subject. So there's an article from electric.co about the model, the glass roof, the all glass roof for the Model S. So these are pictures and videos that are out there, but we can look at that and again get a feeling for what that's going to be from an experience type in the Model 3.
Yeah, the first pictures came from one of our Twitter followers. His name is Nick Hoffman. I believe he works at one of the Tesla dealers in the States, or not dealers, showrooms, sorry. And he said, we got one new Model S. So I tweeted back to him. I says, make sure you take some, sit in the back of the car, take some pictures and videos. So he responded to us and gave us that information.
Absolutely.
And stuff. So yeah, looked really good.
Looks really nice.
Thanks, Nick.
Looks really nice. And again, we talked about, that it's going to have UV protection and all kinds, and there'll still be safety elements there from a roll cage
It is tempered
glass.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And I think currently that option for, it's ultraviolet and infrared reflective. And the option for the Model S is $1,500 and the panoramic sunroof is $2,000.
So I think that falls in line again what Tesla's been saying with the Model 3, because there's a lot of confusion because they've said they're going to offer a Model 3 with a metal roof, a panoramic roof, and the all glass roof. Yep. And if you look at what they've done with the Model S, it's essentially the same thing. Metal roof is standard, no cost. The all-glass roof is $1,500, and the panoramic roof, which is the sunroof option, costs a little bit more.
And I guess it's more because of the mechanics, the hardware.
Yeah, there's more involved, exactly. So I fully expect the Model 3 to follow the same line as the Model S. It's free, option 1, option 2 with those options. So.
Great. So continue to look for those pictures as well, and let us know what you think, if you like that or not. Some good news coming from Electric as well on the Model 3 that an analyst has come out saying that they think that the Model 3 is on track for the second half of 2017, which is good, which is everything that we're hearing. There was a gentleman named Brad Erickson and his partner Elliot Arnson from Pacific Crest, I guess it's a financial firm, that had a meeting, heard some information from Tesla, and they came out of the meeting saying, it's all on track for 2017, according to what they've heard. They go on to talk about some of the stock being bullish and things like that. But again, it's nice to hear these other sources that just continue to confirm what we're hearing from Tesla proper.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's unless you hear otherwise, they're still on track.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, it's interesting on that on track. So I know that when Tesla launched the Model 3 and had those numbers, there were a lot of naysayers that were saying, they'll never do those kind of numbers. They just can't do it. So there's an article that electric.co just put out. This one's from InsideEV.com.
Inside EVs,
And they put out this kind of comparison about the GM Chevy Model Bolt, their Model EV, production, pre-production to production time frame and methodology against Tesla's Model 3 announcement and pre-production to stated production comparisons. And it's a great article. I encourage you to read it. You'll probably put some of the information in the back and some of the link in the show notes. But basically, GM has a little bit more stringent, or not stringent, they have a different process for, when they bring out a concept car to production. Maybe you could explain a little bit about that, how that works.
Well,
with
GM typically, I think the main argument here is that Tesla has not shown any pre-production Model 3s on the roads yet, whereas GM has been testing the Bolt, essentially for the last year. I think it really just has to do with the nimbleness of the company. GM just has this long testing process that they go through. It takes longer. Whereas Tesla tends to do their testing on a much shorter time scale. So, and I've done a video on this before as to when we can expect to see Model 3 prototypes on the road being spotted in the wild.
And these would be alpha and beta prototypes, right?
Well, we're beyond the alpha prototypes are really the prototypes that we saw at the reveal event. Okay. So what we're really looking at here is validation prototypes, beta vehicles, if you will.
These are the projected 300 that we had heard that they were ordering parts for.
Well, they do have to build a fleet of captive vehicles, if you will, so that they can do, road testing and extreme testing. Like they have to take it to Sweden and Norway and Death Valley and, the usual things like that to test out. Now, they're already testing those things on the component side of the scale. But certain elements of building the vehicle, the production line has to be in place in order to start testing some of that tooling. I expect that to happen sometime in the early spring. So I've done a video on this before where we talked about, the production, when we started seeing Model X prototypes and when it actually went into production. I think Model 3 is going to largely follow that, but on a little bit more accelerated timescale. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing Model 3 prototypes sometime January, February timeframe, somewhere in there. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on that, but we should definitely start seeing those soon.
Exactly. And the bottom line for the article, it's an interesting read, was that Tesla's methodology in comparison of pre-production timelines is pretty close to the Chevy Bolt. So the Chevy Bolt EV being 2 years and Tesla's Model 3 being 2.25 years. So by looking at the way that they do things and their methodologies, it's safe to say that Tesla is on track to meet the shipping timeframes that they're talking about.
Well, part of it too is experience. They have a lot more experience now, and a simpler vehicle too means that you don't have to spend quite as much time. And Elon, I've heard Elon say recently that most of their development time is usually on the average about 3 years, whereas most manufacturers it's anywhere from 6 to 7.
Right. Exactly.
The Bolt is an exception because it was largely a Sonic with stuff kind of shoved in there, and they had a lot of help from LG.
Right.
So
absolutely. So they're not out of line with the rest of the industry, certainly with GM, and they've already put supplier deadlines in place and things like that. So we should again start seeing a lot more activity for next year. I guess the only caveats that could hiccup the timelines, and we've talked about this before, is if there's suppliers, if there's an issue with supplying certain parts.
I think the fact that Elon, and I think I've mentioned this before, the fact that Elon had purposely leaked the July 1st date was a calculated move on his behalf to not only let the public know, but suppliers know that they're on notice, that they won't tolerate delays. They've also said that they're fully prepared to build as many parts as that they need inside of Tesla to mitigate delays.
Yeah.
So they're dead serious about this program. So
absolutely.
We'll see. I mean, barring any kind of act of nature or something really crazy going on, I think it's going to be on time.
Absolutely. And again, this is all good news because this is probably the number one question that we get, emails and comments on is, when are we going to get delivery? Are we going to see shipments starting in 2017? Well, right now everything is still indicating that they're on track for that.
The thing you have to remember, folks, is that the reveal was already 9 months ago.
Right. Yeah.
And they're talking about starting production literally 6 months from now. This is going to move very, very quickly. 2017 is going to blow by so fast that you won't even think about it.
Right.
And, if you think the wait is bad now, wait till you put your configuration and you have to wait for your car. So we'll keep an eye on this. As more information comes out, you'll be the first to know. We'll get it out there. But 2017 is going to be super exciting. We're going to start seeing the snowball effect.
Absolutely.
It's really going to start happening.
And again, to ensure that they can meet these deliveries, Tesla just secured $500 million in credit lines. This is an article by electric.co as well, through Deutsche Bank, from what I'm reading. And again, it's there if they need it, and it's all towards vehicle factory for Model 3 production from Fremont and Gigafactory Nevada. So it's just more money that they'll need if they.
Speaking of the Gigafactory, I'll put a video up here behind us. We just got some new drone footage by a gentleman.
Saw that,
And the factory's already doubled in size.
Right.
And it's getting very close to being closed out on this expansion phase. Now, keep in mind, the Gigafactory is being built in phases. Right now, as it stands, the doubling of the factory size really puts it at about 30% of the finished size. They're expecting to finish this by 2020.
Yep.
It's a massive factory. So there's definitely some movement. We're expecting cell production. Now, they've been building power walls and power packs at this factory for some time now. But the actual cell production, which is the new 2170 cells, are going to be starting to be manufactured at the factory any day now. They've been calling towards the end of the year for this to start to play. Also heard that there is going to be a Tesla event at the Gigafactory for investors, not media, but for investors on January 4th, I think it is.
Yep.
So maybe we might get some more information around there. So like I said, after the holidays, as soon as we get some more information, you'll be first to know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And at the end of last quarter, just for your financial buffs, Tesla had over $3 billion in cash. So definitely on the healthy front from that standpoint to continue.
I wish I had $3 billion in cash.
Wouldn't that be? We'd at least be driving a Model S right now. And some other news that came out on Tesla front, electrek.co as well had an article about Tesla now offering vegan interiors, next-gen premium in-house seats. Of course, we know that Tesla is now, they brought that in-house as far as seat production goes for the Model S and the X. They have this ultra-white synthetic leather option, which is a vegan faux leather option. So
yeah, that first appeared on the Model X. They brought it to the Model S, and they've just recently revamped all the seat options on the Model S now. So they have a basic textile black seat, and then all the other seats now are leather, including, and of course this white, ultra white. Sadly, they got rid of the gray color, which is my personal choice.
It, I'm not sure.
So I'm hoping if I can, ideally, I'd like to have the synthetic leather interior in the gray on the Model 3, but remains to be seen as far as what they do.
So if you're interested in vegan interiors, and there's no reason why this won't be offered on the Model 3 as an option.
Oh, no, I fully expect it to be. So, it's just what color options are they going to give us? You know, you're going to have your standard black, a tan, and maybe some kind of gray, and maybe the white. If there's a particular color option you'd like, don't tell us, tell Tesla.
Tell Tesla, absolutely. And in keeping with the interiors and news about that, we just saw an article yesterday from, I believe, electrek.co as well, that Tesla hired the former Volvo head of interior engineering to improve its interior quality.
This is awesome.
So they hired a gentleman by the name of Anders Bell. He used to be at Volvo, and he's now joining them to head their interior engineering. So this is a guy that's going to take the design work that we still don't know, right? We still haven't seen anything on the design. We get asked that question a lot. Oh, is it going to have a HUD? Is it going to have another display? We don't know yet. Is the 15-inch going to be different? Is it going to stick out so much? We don't know. But this guy's here to take whatever the design is finalized and execute and build that.
I think what we're seeing here is the first movement on Tesla's part to really improve the interior of the S and the X. Yep. And while we don't know what the 3 is, so we can't comment on that yet. But I think if you talk to just about anybody out there, the basic complaint about the Model S is largely the interior. The materials are not of high enough quality to justify a car of that price range.
Price point, yeah.
So I think finally Tesla's realized that they really have to get around to that. So this is a good hire. I expect to see some results from this over the next year. They've done a facelift on the exterior of the car, so now the interior is ripe for a revamp. So I think over the next 12 months, we should see some fruits of those labors, hopefully.
Absolutely. But definitely one of the top guys in the industry. So that's
Volvo interiors are amazing. They're nice. Really, really nice.
They're very nice. And obviously Tesla, we talked about the battery and the cost advantages and why they can build the Model 3 for the price point because of their economies of scale. But another article that just came out from electrek.co about Tesla's battery lead in the cost perspective. And they've got a chart that just simplifies it, that they really are the leader when it comes down to the cost of the batteries. The closest number that we've heard is somewhere around the $190 per kilowatt hour.
Currently,
that is probably assumed to be less by the time the Model 3 starts rolling off.
I would not be, Tesla's been talking a lot about $100 per kilowatt hour of storage being the critical tipping point for EVs to go mainstream, because that really equates to a drivetrain in an EV being equivalent to a gasoline car's drivetrain. So once you reach that tipping point, it's like a snowball effect. It's just going to keep going. It would not surprise me that Tesla reaches that goal probably by about 2018 from the Gigafactory. Like I said, the savings, and Elon has said many times that they are looking for savings minimum of 30%. And he says, if he can't reach 30%, I should be fired. So when he says something like that, I'm sure that they're pretty confident that they've actually got it above 30% in terms of savings. So but they're very mum on the whole subject because, like I said, it's proprietary technology.
Right.
And for them, it's a key differentiator compared to everybody else.
Part of their secret sauce.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so their batteries are the lowest when you look at a cost. There's this chart that is on this article, and that talks about cost per total warranted kilowatt hour in a 1 cycle per day of Tesla being 23 cents in that measurement, whereas the BYD Mini, which is the Chinese manufacturer, BYD, theirs is $1.53. And I guess these are U.S. numbers, so I'm assuming sorry, they're in AUD, Australian dollars.
10 cents on the dollar.
Is that what it is? So
for us anyways.
So they're at least 30% lower than the closest competitor, which is all good news for us, because that will help keep the Model 3 cost down, right?
Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. Autopilot 8.1. So there was an article from Electric as well that's coming anytime now, because Elon had tweeted that it's coming in 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago.
They just put out a minor software update. I think it was last night to do some minor improvements and stuff. The big 8.1 update is still the one that supposedly is going to come with another UI refresh, as well as bring the Autopilot 2 cars up to parity with Autopilot 1.0 equipped vehicles. Then from there, they're expecting to do monthly updates, and then it should really snowball.
Right.
Elon just tweeted too that their Tesla Vision artificial intelligence vision learning system now is fully operational. So now they just need to go and start collecting data. So this 8.1 update coming out between now and the end of the year, or very shortly thereafter, is really going to start snowballing the data back into headquarters. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting that I read that article, and there was a list that they talked about features that are available in Autopilot 1, but not Autopilot 2 yet. And the ones that are available today are auto low beam, auto high beam, auto dimming touchscreen in the instrument cluster, side collision warning, speed assist. Those are available today. Ones that haven't come yet, but that are planned to come, are things like auto windshield wipers, park assist, blind spot detection, forward collision warning.
Emergency braking.
Sorry, I think I'm reading that backwards. The one that I've already been pushing. Yes, R strike through. So I am reading that correctly.
We're waiting for the balance.
We're waiting for the balance. Forward collision warning, auto emergency braking, all these kind of things. So it's when you look at the list of features, when they're all finally there, that's a pretty comprehensive list of features.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better because now they can actually start working on the level, 3, 4, and 5 autonomy at that point. So, but they need real world data, which is why the software is actually running in shadow mode on the systems.
Right.
So they can start collecting that data.
And just showing the technology at work, there was a video that was on electric.co article as well about the new radar tech already saving lives. Now, the video shows that a car that's 2 cars behind of one that stopped, and they're on a freeway, and somebody had just pulled off he stopped to try to make the exit at the last physical second, and the guy two cars back from him, and there was an SUV in front of him, had a Tesla, and it warned him, so he was able to stop in time. Maybe you can comment a little bit more about those details.
Well, despite the fact that the person that's driving the car decided to stop at the last second instead of going to the next exit like a normal person would, who's got proper driver training. No, what had happened here is he was not on autopilot.
Right.
The autopilot system or the radar system was doing its job, and it can actually see around the vehicle and under the vehicle, and saw the second vehicle in front of him.
Exactly.
And because it was blocked by an SUV in front of him, and he got the warning, and he was able to brake hard and swerve, to avoid hitting the vehicle in front of him. So it was not an autopilot related avoidance system.
Maneuver.
It was an automatic thing, but the radar was doing its job. So we're going to see more and more of this. It's quite interesting.
Absolutely. And finally, on some Tesla news, Tesla has managed to open their first showroom in Michigan after a lot of trials on
pushing
that.
Their luck.
Apparently, despite the fact that it's illegal, I guess, for Tesla to sell cars in Michigan still, they've opened a showroom in Troy, Michigan. In a mall, I think.
Yeah. So what they're really doing here is that, they can't get a license to sell their vehicles because of the blockade that Michigan lawmakers, and of course GM is behind this to a certain degree, that they can at least open a showroom, and they can do what they've been doing in Texas, obviously, is not actively selling the vehicle. You still got to go and place your order online in the comfort of your own home.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of pushing it to the kind of limit. I think what Tesla would really like is not only to sell the vehicles, but more importantly is to service them.
Absolutely.
That's really, really critical, because these poor folks either have to go to Windsor in Canada or go to Ohio or Wisconsin.
It's quite the drive.
So it's unfortunate.
Yep.
But I think in due time, this stuff will work itself out.
And this is actually a gallery store that's open inside a Nordstrom Nordstrom
they did the
store.
Nordstrom
so
thing.
They could kind of, I guess, get away with it.
Maybe they'll do it up here.
700 square feet.
We're going to see Nordstrom here in Mississauga soon.
Yeah, we're going to see
maybe
one
they'll do the
locally
same thing.
soon. They might. That would be nice. And they have now Tesla has about 100 stores and galleries throughout the U.S., just if you're counting numbers, including this one. So if you need more information from Inside EVs, that's the article to check out. Mm-hmm. Some other EV news that we want to talk about quickly. There was an interesting article that I picked out that talks about well-to-wheel emissions. And what it's and this is from USA numbers, looking at the different states and their outputs in producing emissions from that standpoint. And we're not talking
like clean energy.
Clean energy. We know that EVs don't emit any emissions when they're driving, obviously, but there are emissions that are calculated that you need to take into account for generating that electricity to charge the car that they're going to run on. And a lot of it can come from various sources. It could be nuclear, wind, solar, coal, all kinds of different elements to do that. So what this study looks at is the states and how they produce electrical energy and how that impacts the EV market. And then they rank them from the best to the worst as far as cleanest.
Who is the best?
Who do you think the best is?
Well, green. Got to be somewhere green, right?
Somewhere green. Yeah, small. How about the Northeast? How about Vermont? They're number one far as that. They're less than 1% of their emissions come from.
That's amazing.
From bad sources, I guess, is to put it in layman's terms. They really, really beat everybody else by a long shot. Their pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent is less than 1% or less than 1 pound for annual emissions per vehicle. That's how it's rated, this article in the state. Whereas the highest, which is interesting, I would have thought it would have been somewhere more in the southern U.S., but it's actually West Virginia, and that's because they're still the highest coal-producing for electricity generation state in the USA. And the national average for EV was 4,800 pounds per vehicle of carbon dioxide emissions, and West Virginia is at 9,400, so 1.5 times more, not quite 2, but certainly over 2 times, I guess. Yeah. And to compare that to gasoline, though, electricity obviously is coming down in cleaner ways. So gasoline average was almost 11,500 pounds of CO2 per vehicle. So EV ranks at half, if not a lot less than that in most states. And again,
well, as we get more renewable energy that's coming online with solar now, because we just saw the other article there the other day that solar now is by far the cheapest way to produce energy of any of the sources now. Yeah. And of course, with the refinements and in the technology and the pushing down of the vehicle or of the solar panels cost, the PV costs now, that we're going to start seeing a lot more of that. So it's all good news. So.
Absolutely. And let's hope we continue to see that with people like Elon, joining Trump's advisory team that we just found out. There's an article from thehill.com who talked about that. Obviously, there's various reasons that the Trump administration, they want the likes of Pepsi CEOs. They have Facebook, Google or Alphabet, part of Google, Amazon. These are a lot of tech companies that are on this advisory council. Obviously, their number one, I believe, goal is to look at job growth in the USA and how they can continue to help the U.S. economy by stimulating job growth in these types of private sector companies.
My take on this, if you want my take on it, is...
we do.
What's your take? Well, having Elon there is good in a sense that Elon will be the kind of guy, if Trump says, well, what can we do to make things better? And then Elon lays it out, says, look, we got to do this, 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 and this. Yeah. And if it doesn't happen, Elon's going to go and say to everybody, well, I gave him all this information and it's not happening. Yeah. And so I think in some ways that hopefully Elon, with the way that he likes to push his agenda to moving to sustainable transportation and energy generation, will hopefully try and keep some of these guys honest. But remains to be seen.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens on that. And we're talking about the Trump administration coming in early next year. The EPA, which is in the USA as well, and this is an article from InsideEVs.com, they're rushing to affirm the 2015 EPA standards in the USA. They're trying to get that done before the new administration takes office. And this is to lock in the 2025 fuel emission standards or the EPA ratings. And right now they have those fleet emission standards at 54.5 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to lock in, because the
car
people
companies
are speculating that the Trump administration may look to lower those.
Well, that's the car companies are lobbying because they don't want to move. They like things the way they are. And, they've got all the money and all the power to lobby for this thing. So,
We'll see what happens, but it's all good news for us folks that have a reservation in for electric vehicle, or if you've already owned an electric vehicle, either BEV or plug-in, at least you're experiencing those benefits without having to worry about that. So absolutely. And just to confirm that the EV industry is very valid, we know it is because we're doing this show and we all have the same minds. But there's some information that came from Electric article as well by Fred Lampert. He's a great writer. I love a lot of the stuff Fred does.
Bonjour, Fred.
Bonjour, exactly. And basically saying that electric vehicle startups are on pace to raise almost $2 billion this year in venture capital funding. And that's up about 100% increase from last year. So
not just that, we're seeing vehicle sales now doubling. EV vehicle sales in the U.S., North America, are doubling every year. So there's definitely a snowball effect. It's minuscule. It's 1% of the vehicles total, but it's still going. So as the cheaper vehicles come onto the market, energy generation starts getting greener and greener, it'll start catching on. It's just going to take a little time. This is a long-term game. Absolutely. This is not 5 years. This stuff is going to take a generation to happen.
But it is that start of the tsunami that we keep talking about. All these different elements. The increase in EV manufacturers really getting into the game. Not just talking about it for compliance, but actually looking to get more serious into the game and producing and plans to produce EV vehicles. All the charging infrastructure we talked about the last show, how much that's increased over the last 6 months to a year. It's phenomenal. All these different things, legislation, regulations, all these different emissions lowering, all these things have an impact on the EV industry as a whole. And it's just great to see that people are investing or looking to now easily invest in EV technologies as we move forward, knowing that it's a viable market.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So good to see that. And, obviously there's a lot. We've been reporting on all these vehicles that are coming up, and we'll talk a little bit more about one in a sec. Before we get to that, though, we can't really have a show now without talking about Norway. You guys are just phenomenal as a country.
Yeah.
An article came out by Electric citing that Norway has now reached the rare milestone of 100,000, and these are all electric vehicles. These are BEVs, not plug-in hybrids, which a lot of other countries use as well, but 100,000 BEV vehicles on the roads. They want, to quadruple that within the next 3 years. By 2020, they want to get to 400,000. So that's phenomenal. They are a global leader in electric vehicle adoption. We know that. And just to, when you compare 100,000 vehicles, it doesn't sound like a lot, but the whole country is only about 5.2 million in population. That's an average U.S. city, right? Or an average, major European urban center, if not smaller than that. So, and that's only 3% of the vehicles on the roads in Norway. But we'll leave the hats on, but otherwise it'd be hats off to Norway.
Has to do a lot with, because they have excellent incentives for the EVs. Correct. Because they have, 100%? We've been corrected.
Yes. We have an email on that.
We thought it was a 25% import tax on vehicles into Norway. It's not. It's 100% tax.
Correct. Absolutely. And
they waive it for EVs.
They do.
So, hello.
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually had an email on that. We'll pull that one out just for a sec. But just to thank Zubnek, if I got that name right. I'm sorry about that. And he's from Stavanger, Norway, and he sent us an email saying, it's 100% import tax. So can you imagine paying $40,000 for a car than having to pay $40,000 for a tax? I mean, that's just crazy.
That's why we're seeing so much EV adoption there, is because they waive the tax.
Absolutely,
that's a pretty darn good incentive.
They do, absolutely. And some news out of Renault and Nissan. I know a lot of people have been kind of wondering what's going on with Nissan, when's the next Leaf, all that kind of stuff. But an article from electric.co talking about Renault and Nissan co-developing the next common EV platforms for their vehicles. And this is not to be confused with the Leaf refresh that should be coming out, or redesign that's coming out.
Another vehicle platform.
This is the next generation of their movements, collaborating on the electric vehicle platforms. But again, this is going to be a long product cycle. This isn't something that's going to ship tomorrow. They don't even see anything coming to market till at least 2020. One of the reasons is Zoe or Renault and Nissan use different cells for the batteries, right? I believe that the Zoe or uses LG Chem cells in their, especially in their new 41 kilowatt hour Zoe, and Nissan uses cells of its own design, which we know aren't the best.
Well, sharing of technology. For those who don't know this, I mean, Nissan owns Renault.
Yes.
So the sharing of technology is not uncommon. I mean, it's the same thing with Hyundai and Kia.
Correct.
I mean, they share a lot of technology there.
Exactly. So, and that Nissan could be looking into selling its battery cell manufacturing business and partner with LG, and that would make sense.
LG is growing very fast with their stuff. I mean,
LG and Panasonic, right?
Well, we'll talk more about LG a little bit in a little bit later article too.
Absolutely. And just quick, bringing it back for a little bit more Canadian content, there's an article that just came out from metronews.ca about EVSCs coming to Ontario, en route locations predominantly.
EVSCs are
electric vehicle supply equipment, or
also known as a charging
stations. Even though the charger is built into the vehicle,
well, the Teslas anyway.
The charging stations, exactly. This is part of the Ontario government's grant commitment. They've spent $62.5 million in funding for fast charging stations for the province, which is great for us. And these are going to be expanding their footprints to 25 Canadian Tire Gas Plus locations in Ontario, which is a first for them. Add Energy is the company that's won that contract, and they're a Montreal-based company. Actually, I've spoken to some folks there, and they're going to start rolling out these stations early next year to join some larger part of the network that they've already got out there. Most of them will be along the busy highways, like the 401.
The 401, which is the stretch,
so,
basically Toronto to Montreal.
Toronto to Montreal, or Windsor to Montreal, basically.
Well, right, forget about that.
So along the en routes and things like that, we don't know exactly what they'll get. They're talking about putting in, again, level 2 curbside, and then direct current DC fast chargers as well. So a mix of those. Now, the caveat here is there's a cost. It's not free. They're going to rapid charging, so the DC fast chargers are going to be $20 an hour, and with per minute billing. And then while the standards are $1.50 an hour.
That's expensive.
Excuse me. That's pretty expensive. So we'll see what happens there. Good thing Tesla, we will be able to at least get our credits for supercharging and be able to run a lot of that for free for a while. So we'll see what happens. And then GM. So GM's in the news from a manufacturer perspective. They've delivered their first couple of Chevy Bolts. And the interesting thing about this article from Electric is that it was in Fremont, so right in Tesla's backyard. Was that planned?
That's not a coincidence.
What do you think about that?
No.
The first 3 customers were in Fremont, and these are guys that had owned previous. One was replacing an i3, and another one a Prius. From that perspective. So anyway, they are started delivers. So if you're interested in, if you've purchased a Bolt or you're looking to purchase a Bolt,
but you must be in one of the CARB states.
Exactly.
Right now it's California and Oregon.
For now. On the Chevy Bolt subject, there's some confusion over the charging stations, and there was a few articles that came out, one that we picked up from Electrek, that talked about just the way information flows from GM to their end users, to potential consumers, is a little confusing. They're in their mapping software, they're actually pulling in information from PlugShare and other sources, I'm sure. And of course, we know if we've looked at those sites that they show everybody's chargers. So
unless you apply a filter.
Unless you apply a filter. Yeah. But you're right. You see everybody's. And there were some snapshots from the Canadian website for the Chevy Bolt EV that talked about, when you search for charging stations, it'll show you Tesla superchargers, it'll show you Chatamo chargers, and all these others out there. And if you're a non-EV person getting into the market, because you want to do your thing and then you believe in it, and you pull up these maps and you say, oh, there's one over here, and it's a Tesla, I'll go plug in, or it's a Nissan dealership, or whatever, it's a Chatamo. And the confusion seems to stem that people are thinking that they can use these stations where they can't.
They need to apply. They need to really apply some filters or have some kind of direct API with PlugShare so that they can pull only the relevant information into the vehicles that because the Bolt, it has a CCS adapter or a connector on it. The Bolt only has a CCS connector on it for fast charging, so you can't use the CHAdeMO and you can't use the superchargers.
Right.
So the people that are buying the cars who may not be completely educated on these, and we can't rely, unfortunately, on the dealers, because the dealers don't do typically a very good job. I'm not saying everybody, but a good majority of them don't do a very good job about educating the customers about this stuff. So we expect to see some confusion, at least for a little while, until this gets rectified, hopefully.
Absolutely. So hopefully it will. But if you have some friends, if you know anybody that's looking at the Bolt, make sure you instruct them accordingly as far as the charging.
Well, hopefully the dealer would be able to do a better job and actually teach them properly.
And Volkswagen, of course, to try to claw their way out of the shame from Dieselgate, is investing quite heavily in EV, as we know, with product lines that they're going to be coming out with, which we've talked about before. Bev's really excited about that. So
that would be my wife.
Yes, that would be his wife. But obviously, Volkswagen is making additional investments in electric vehicles in the U.S., and they're looking at charging infrastructure. So they've come out with this Electrify America program. Do you know a little bit more about that?
I haven't really looked into it, all that details, but I do know that part of their, which shall we say, their punishment, if you will, for lack of a better word, is for them to invest a certain amount of money into infrastructure. And so this is probably part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to invest in the infrastructure a lot in 2017. They're going to increase education and awareness about EVs and launching a Green City initiative as well. Predominantly California, it looks like, so in ZEV states, but maybe that'll go out from there. And they're going to install chargers, funding for that, maybe another 300 plus. These are L2 and DC fast chargers, so 50 to 150 kilowatt chargers.
I'm not crazy about the whole education in the ZV only states. That smacks smacks a little bit of compliance.
Exactly. But we'll see. And then also developing a high-speed cross-country network consisting of 200 plus stations of DC fast chargers.
So it's a start.
It's a start. Absolutely. And finally, in our other EV manufacturers news, if you haven't seen the photos for the Lucid Motors, the Air, all battery electric vehicle, you should. It's and we've got a whole bunch that you're probably putting up as we speak. That we've got. It's a nice looking car. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so the first thing you need to know about Lucid is that they used to be called Ativa, and the chief technology officer is Peter Rawlinson. Now, for those of you who haven't been following Tesla all that long, Peter Rawlinson was the chief engineer at Tesla. He was responsible for the Model S program. So he left Tesla pretty early on in the days before the Model S really came to market, sometime in 2012. Right. And he kind of was working kind of underground with these guys. I think it's a fabulous vehicle. It shares a lot of kind of the same ideas, the skateboard, the cylindrical cells, battery pack on the bottom. They're doing some interesting things with the battery pack instead of just doing a flat battery pack, that they're doing some sculpting in there to make up some more room. Yeah. So I think Peter is really taking a lot of his knowledge that he gained kind of at Tesla and saying, you know what, we can improve on it in these aspects. Now, whether the market can really absorb another $100,000 plus premium electric vehicle, I don't know. But you have to keep in mind, these guys are new. Tesla has a 10-year lead on these guys in terms of, the sales aspect and getting to market. So again, I think, their business plan is similar to what Tesla has to do. Start at the high end, work your way down. They don't have a Gigafactory. The exterior of the vehicle is not ugly. To me, it looks a little bit kind of Lincoln-ish, which is fine. The interior really shines on this vehicle. Now, the concept that they showed, I don't know if the interior is going to make it to production. They seem to indicate that it is, but the interior is amazing on this vehicle. Yeah,
it's kind of like your basic 5-seater, then there's a 4-seater executive style, I guess, that you have an armrest with a monitor or controls.
Well, the seats move all the way back. Exactly. Now, they have said that they showed a picture, and I think I'll put one up behind here, of one with just a complete bench seat in the back. That'll be cheaper. So anyways, they're claiming 300 miles, real 300 miles with an optional 400-mile option as well. Yeah,
so 100 kilowatt hour up to
and 130 kilowatt hour battery pack too. So again, this all speaks to improvements in battery technology, packaging, so on and so forth. But again, this is not a $60,000 car. This is a $100,000 U.S. car before you add options. So it's just going to be in some ways one level maybe above,
basically.
A level above Tesla in some respects. So we'll see. Looking forward to it, but again, they're claiming that they're going to production in 2018.
Yeah.
So it's still another 2 years away from that. So hopefully they can get the
0 to 60, 2.5 seconds. So it'll definitely be fast. They don't talk about the batteries, right? If they partnered with that, LG, they say our battery. So I guess it's their own. Or it's Samsung. Sorry.
Samsung. Samsung. Yes, that's right. They signed a contract with Samsung, so that's great,
guys. Absolutely.
Well, like I said, if it's not Tesla, it's either LG Chem or it's Samsung SDI.
Yeah,
those are the big
Panasonic.
Guys. Well, Panasonic is / Tesla, really.
True. Absolutely. Well, that's it for a lot of the mainstream news that we've been able to pick up over the last few weeks. We've got a couple in the mailbag.
So, it's mailbag.
Let's do that one. Why don't you do this one?
Okay.
You've got a couple here, and then we'll get into these ones.
So the first one comes from a gentleman named Tobias, and he's in Germany, and he asked a few questions on here. So what do you think? Is the Model 3 air conditioning system going to run on CO2 as opposed to Freon? Will the Model 3 have any Car2X capabilities? Is the keyless entry feature going to be more secure than current systems? And lastly, do you think Model 3 will be CCS compatible? So right now, it's too early to answer any of these questions. We have no data on this at this point. What I do happen to know, though, that in Europe, the Model 3 connector, that's where you plug in your for the charger, is an SAE.
Yep.
It's different from the North American standard. So will it be CCS compatible? Well, not built into the vehicle. You'll need some kind of adapter. That's if somebody makes one or Tesla makes one. We know that they make a CHAdeMO adapter in North America and Europe, so you can certainly get that. So we do know that Tesla is part of the CCS consortium now, so they're part of the working group.
Yep.
So hopefully they'll come out with some kind of adapter for that down the road. Again, the fast DC charging outside of Tesla right now is this battle between CHAdeMO and CCS.
Yep.
And CHAdeMO was largely a Japanese standard. It's kind of spread itself because of the fact that the Nissan Leaf came with it.
Yes.
But most of the North American and now some of the German companies now are standardizing on CCS. So I think long term, outside of Tesla's supercharger, that CCS will be kind of the default standard. But right now, it's kind of the Wild West. It's all over the place right now.
Absolutely. So there you go. We have an email from Jim in Nevada City, California, and he's asking about supercharging. That Elon's been quoted that anywhere you go in the world, if there's electricity, you can charge. And he's asking, what does that mean? Is it different for the models? Not really.
Not really. Literally, if you can get electricity into the vehicle, the onboard charging system will adapt to it. The main thing really is the connector that's on board the vehicle. Now, I was mentioning to you earlier that I think it was just this summer, there was a group of people that were taking Model S's on a world tour. They actually drove around the world.
Right. Yes.
7 or 8 of these vehicles, maybe 9 of the vehicles. And some of them were from Europe. When they came to North America, they couldn't use the superchargers because the connector is literally different, as I just mentioned to Tobias. But one of the people that was in the gang had created his own adapter and was mentioning this, and the Tesla engineers said, no, that's impossible. And they came out and looked at it, and sure enough, they proved that it actually works. So like I said, a European and North American car can go anywhere as long as you have some kind of adapter to get electricity in the vehicle. So
there you go. Great thinking of traveling around. We got a recent email from Tashi in Colorado, and Tashi writes about, and thanks for Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, by the way,
Thank you.
About the wheel size of the Model 3 pictures that were at the party. Do we have any info on that?
We absolutely do. It's important to remember that what I'm about to quote is on the prototype. And when Tesla typically shows a prototype, they're fully well-equipped vehicles. So the silver prototype, black prototype, red prototype, whatever you want to call them, had 20-inch wheels on that. Yep. And when Tesla shows a prototype, they tend to put the bigger wheels on the vehicle.
Right. 19s, I think, are the standards.
On the Model S, it's 19s and 21, and on the Model X, it's 20 and 22.
Makes
so on
sense,
the Model 3, they show 20-inch, so I fully expect a 2-inch difference, so 18 inches.
Makes sense, yeah.
On the standard vehicles with an option for 20-inch.
Yeah.
The prototypes are running Michelin Pilot tires. And the prototypes were also running what's called a staggered setup. So they have different tire sizes on the front and the back. Right. The fronts were running 235 35/20s, and on the back they're running a slightly wider 275 30/20. I don't expect a staggered setup to be in the production vehicles. They'll be standardized, same wheels all over the place. I mean, this is a mass market car. You can't do crazy things with this. So I hope that answers your question.
We don't know if Michelin will be the final.
No, but there was an article
on that.
Well, there was an article from Electric. Thanks, Lambert, Fred. That claimed that Tesla had signed a contract with Hankook to be the tire supplier. So we'll see.
Yeah. Tashi's also asking about who are really the early Model 3 reservation holders. How is that kind of distinguished? I don't think we really have an answer to that, right? I guess
I will take that as people who reserved, say, in the first week.
Yeah, from the pre-launch, from the pre-reveal up into the first week after the reveal, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. Or maybe it could just mean the first 12 months of production, 400,000 cars.
Yeah, we really can't tell you the answer, Tashi, because we really don't know what that means. I would say anybody that's going to be, within the first 6 months to a year of production could be, an early reservation holder. Right?
Well, let's just say if you put a reservation in today, you're not an early reservation holder. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And will there be a bundle deal discount with Tesla with the cars, solar roof, and battery? I don't know.
Well,
I haven't heard anything.
Okay, so my opinion on this right now is that as far as a discount, no. Tesla has a one pricing policy, which is why some of the people got wrapped on their fingers in the last third quarter for selling brand new cars at a discount.
That's right.
I think there was a bit of a fluke there. I think that when Model 3 does actually come out and they put the Powerwalls and the solar panels into production, that they will offer some kind of bundle in the sense that here's your fixed cost every month. Not, we're going to give you a $20,000 discount. It'll be, here's one price, for that kind of thing. Of course, the prices will vary because they got to come out and do an audit on your house, figure out, how many shingles they got to put on and stuff.
Right.
This stuff will work itself out down the road, but it's a little too early to answer that question in its entirety. So
absolutely. But good question. Thanks for asking. Thanks for asking all those questions. One final email. This came in from Dave from the Ottawa, Canada area. And obviously we're in winter time, so we're wearing our, of course, festive hats, and we've got lots of snow outside to play with right now. You did your video on your snowblower, your electric battery snowblower recently.
I've used it 4 times this year already.
I know.
Last year I used it 4 times the whole season.
I used mine twice. gas powered though. I don't have
climate change.
It is. It's happening. But Dave talks about obviously the winter driving in Canada and states that experience winter driving, and in countries, of course, around the world. That he's got an S, I guess, and it's got obviously a backup camera, and he's wondering about the other cameras that'll be coming out in the newer models. What are they going to be like as far as the snow and frost and dirt buildup and things like that? How are they going to have a problem in being able to work properly?
Well, Elon has stated that the cameras have heaters in them, and there was a gentleman who just put out a YouTube video. Maybe I'll put it up here behind us. Who took a FLIR camera, infrared camera, and went and looked at a brand new car equipped with the Autopilot 2 camera system, and found that most of the cameras, especially the front camera, did have heating elements. They were emanating heat. Now,
just seen some recent pictures about that.
Exactly. So they are heated to mitigate, frost and snow buildup.
Electric defroster, I guess.
Exactly. My suspicion is that there's a possibility. I don't know this. I haven't confirmed it. I did look at a Autopilot 2 camera in person, up close. I was not able to determine whether the cameras have an oleophobic coating on it, which is basically fingerprints or dirt and oil repulsion. We do know that Elon has said that the cameras will, and the sensor system will compensate for maybe little water spots and stuff. But if there's dirt, there's also going to be alert in the cars telling you to go and clean the cameras off. And I have a backup camera on my car, and I have to, take the dirt off once in a while. So
so no spray nozzles or jets or anything like that to actually wash the cameras. At least at this point, maybe. In the future, who knows? But that's a lot.
No, there's nothing like that. It's completely a manual system.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You were taught during our driver training is to do a walk around the car. Nobody really does that, but if you get in that habit every day, if you're going to use Autopilot, go around and just wipe the cameras off.
Especially with the weather we're getting now, and you get the slush and all that buildup, gets dirty quite fast. So, but anyway, thanks, Dave, for the question. Stay safe up in Ottawa. It's a great town, and you said you noticed that we're running our podcast out of Aurora, Newmarket. Well, that's one of the places that we both reside. We actually film in a different city in Caledon, so we are in the northern GTA-based area. So, but thanks for noticing that. And that concludes our mailbag. So thanks for everybody sending in questions and comments. We do try to answer some of those, of course, off the show, and we get a lot of comments. So that takes us to the end of the show. Do you want to bring up the EV-ANX promo again?
Yes, again, like last time, for the folks who want, there is a book put out by the folks at EV-ANX. And they put a book called Getting Ready for Model 3. You can order this online from their website at EV-ANX. That's EVANNEX.com. And if you use the coupon code during checkout, GR4M3, Get Ready for Model 3, in uppercase, by the way. You have to put that in.
Okay.
When you put the book in, there's a little checkbox where you add the license plate frame. Make sure you put the license plate frame into your shopping basket, because the coupon code won't work unless you put the license plate frame there. So during the checkout, put that in there. You can use the code, and you will get the license plate frame for free. It's a $10 value.
And we're both running them on our cars right now, I think.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Matthew, for that.
We appreciate that.
Good book. And I'll have some more news about EV-ANX sometime in January.
Yeah.
Well, maybe actually closer to February.
So,
stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and we do want to thank, though, we're on that topic, want to thank Charles Morris, who writes some blogs for EV-ANX on their site, and he's chief editor for Charge EV magazine, which I actually had read. It's a nice magazine, actually.
I'll put a link in the show notes. We did an interview with him a few days ago, and he wrote a really good article, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Charles, for bringing the EV market more to light and for including us in that. We appreciate that. And, that takes us to the end of the show. So how can people find us again if you don't already know?
Yeah, so if you want to reach us by email, the email address is m3ocshow@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Model3Owners. Our website
Owners Club.
No, it's actually Model 3
Is it Owners? Okay,
yeah.
I got it.
The website is Model3ownersclub.com. We also have a Facebook page. If you just search for Model 3 Owners Club on Facebook, you can subscribe there. And don't forget to subscribe, obviously, to this YouTube channel, because you get notifications whenever we put out new videos. For those of you who would like to support the program, we have a Patreon campaign. The website is patreon.com/Model3ownersclub.com. All the pledges go to help produce the show and pay for expenses, keep things going and stuff. And we do have some shirts on our store if you'd like to look at some of those. You can find that at Model3ownersclub.com/shop. They've been quite popular, so thanks for that.
Yeah. And of course, on behalf of both Trevor and myself, we want to take this opportunity to wish you all the best for the holiday season, however you celebrate around the world. And of course, for a safe and prosperous 2017. Of course, we can't do this show without viewers, without you guys watching, guys and gals, I should say, watching, and your support, as Trevor mentioned earlier, on some of the campaigns and things that you could support us through. So thank you very much. This has been a fantastic year for us, just starting off. And we know that 2017 is going to be busy.
Oh, boy. You have no idea. We just can't wait. We're going to get so much news out of 2017. So anyways, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one after the holiday sometime in January.
Absolutely. Stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.